Welcome in. It's locked in. Important nonsense betting show. For your viewing convenience, I've got all the times for the games scrolling along the bottom.
Nice.
You are welcome.
We've got a ticker, boys. We're big time.
That's right. We're gonna be breaking down the games here today. We've got 6 this week, so this will actually be our most labor-intensive show. It's really nice because this is gonna like wean us off of like streaming and going through games, because the further we get into this, the less and less games we have to break down. So I think this is gonna work out nicely for us. It's a good wean off the addiction. What do you think?
My money's just gonna get bigger from here on. So
It never goes
let's
away.
ramp
You
it
have
up.
fewer games to bet on, so you have to bet more on each game.
Exactly. B knows.
I have to dive deeper. All right.
Every line it means that much more.
There you go. So we'll kick it off with the first game of the weekend. So Saturday game, the early game. Cincy 5-point favorites hosting the Raiders. 48.5 is the over under on that. And actually that line has moved to 5.5. So I can update that real quick. But 5.5 points for the Bengals. V, what are you thinking? How do you feel about this one?
I'm probably leaning towards a Vegas cover. Normally, what I like about the playoffs is that we get unique matchups in the playoffs.
Mhm.
You know, each of the rounds. But this year, it's kind of weird where these are all rematches, I think, except for SF Dallas.
Right.
So this game happened already, the Bengals versus the Raiders earlier in the year, and the Bengals just smashed the Raiders in Vegas. I think it was like 32-13. But it seems like the Raiders are just playing a lot better.
Yeah, 32-13. It was in week 11.
Yeah, so that was a few weeks ago. But obviously the Raiders have turned things around over the last few weeks. They've had 4 straight wins.
Yep.
A couple against really good teams, including the Colts and the Chargers last week. They're playing better, and I just don't see them getting like blown out in this one. So I think they can keep it close. I would still take the Bengals to win, but I do think the Raiders can cover.
Right. I completely agree there, V. You know, and the big thing is that this Raiders team has gone through their ups and downs, but right now they're playing really well.
Mm-hmm.
They, like you said, they've won 4 outright, and those were all as dogs. And so they're, you know, right there in it where they can make some noise and keep this game close enough that at a weird number like 5 or 5.5, that's not really that close to any key number. It's a value there to take the points with Vegas, because, you know, like we've said, it's just we've seen this matchup, and people are going to play into that and think that, you know, I hate to use the cliche because I honestly don't believe in it, but it's, you know, tough to beat a team twice, as they say. And I don't think it's that tough to beat a team twice, but I think it's that tough to beat a team soundly twice. Right. So this 5.5 is just a number I think is a little out there. So I agree with it on that one.
Well, and same thing. You've got, you know, this game that we're going to be talking about here is the rematch from week 11, where at that point in the season, like the Raiders were left for dead. I left them for dead. I still can't believe they actually made it into the playoffs. Yeah. But that game was the 3rd game in a row they had lost. They lost the game to the Giants for no apparent reason. They got blown out by Kansas City, and then they got blown out by Cincinnati. And they went in on a short week against Dallas, and everybody thought they were dead and they should have lost that game. They end up winning it in overtime. They only lose by 2 points to Washington, get dismantled by Kansas City again, which, I mean, no one's really surprised there. Right. But then they win their last 4 in a row to make it into the postseason. So that game on Thanksgiving against Dallas really turned their entire season around. And since then, they've been playing competitive games. The defense has played a lot better, and they've gone to overtime multiple times. We saw the stat last week in that game that they're now 6-0 playing in overtime with Derek Carr. So, I mean, they know how to play competitive games. They know how to play close games. And I think this one ends up being a field goal either way. Just whoever has the ball last, I think it'll be that close. Right. In our picks here on the Discord, I actually have the Raiders winning this game by a field goal as like one of my first round upsets, because the Bengals are a young team. Like we talked about this in the preseason, how this was a team we thought was just going to get trampled, that they were just going to have shootout games because the defense wasn't good enough. Well, the defense has been good enough this year. So Can they be good enough to win them a playoff game? I don't know. The last couple games at home, they have covered on the spread, but again, for me, it's tough to think they can win by a full touchdown here. I know they're going to have a lot of momentum and stuff on their side, but if you're looking for teams that are hot going into this, I think the Raiders are probably the hottest team right now.
I also say the Raiders are also pretty young too, and I think people might think that Derek Carr has played in a playoff game, but the last time the Raiders made the playoffs, Carr got hurt in the regular season, and I don't even remember.
With like 2 games left to the
Yeah, somebody filled in. So this is going to be Carr's first playoff game as well. So it's going to be very interesting to see how Burrow and Carr both handle that kind of pressure in the first playoff game.
And now that you say that, that's really going to bother me. Why can't I think of it? Was that the Nathan Peterman era?
I don't think Peterman was there.
They had already,
Buffalo, right?
Yeah.
I couldn't tell you who that was.
It was somebody not good.
No, definitely not good. It might have been Matt all their remaining games. It was not good.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I think it was McGloin. Yeah,
that's right.
They lost like the rest of their games with
McGloin.
Carr out, and then they lost in the playoffs.
And I was thinking Glennon, and I was like, Glennon never played there.
They lost to the Texans. I think maybe starting Osweiler or somebody. Right. So it was like not a good game because of that.
Yeah.
But this season, like I said, Raiders 8-9 against the spread, 8-9 on the over/under, 10-7 against the money line. To me, again, like they're hot right now. Against the spread, they've obviously won 3 in a row because of winning the 3 games, and then they took the 3 losses in a row. They didn't cover the spread against Washington because they were 2-point favorites and won by exactly 2 points. So, I mean, they got stuck a little bit there. But again, getting destroyed by Kansas City, winning by just 2 points over Cleveland, close matchups the entire time. And that's the part of this that I actually love here is the under. It's 48.5, and the Bengals are a high-powered offense, so it's very tempting to try to take the Bengals to hit the over here. But like I said, just defensively, the Raiders have been very good. I think there's going to be a lot of pressure, especially on Joe Burrow in his first playoff game. Yes, he's been on a big stage before, but it's the NFL playoffs. It's a different monster, and the pressure that he has there in Cincinnati certainly would not surprise me at 48.5 if it goes under here.
Yeah, and it's a mounting pressure there too. And we have a number here that shows about 60% of the tickets are going over, but about 86% of the money is going under on the total. So sharps feel strongly about it too. And when we get into games in the playoffs, you see teams sometimes shift to hyper awareness of their ball security and sometimes shy away from throwing it around as much as maybe Joe Burrow has the last few weeks to set, the league on fire. So you could see Mixon be getting quite a bit of work in a game even like this, even though, it might not make sense in every situation.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then if you look at the trend on Wild Card Weekend over the last few years, it definitely points towards taking the underdogs and taking the unders in this game. I think it's hitting 60% for both sides. So, you can't go wrong taking the under in this one. I will probably stay away because you never know. Burrow to Jamar Chase can happen at any second and just blow the game wide open. So I would probably just stay away on the over-under on this one.
Yeah, for me, I feel like it's more, again, it kind of proved me wrong last week, but that's mostly just the Chargers' terrible rush defense is how that game got out of hand. But, I mean, they've shown throughout this season that they cannot get into a shootout. If teams start to put points on them, the Raiders just fade. Like if they have to win the game because Derek Carr is carrying them through the air, they absolutely cannot do it. So if you're looking for like you're saying Chase and Burrow, and they get up to like 30 points, 33 points quickly, it's possible that the Raiders get to 14 and are just done.
Yep.
That they hit the under pretty easily because they throw in the towel fairly early because they just can't compete with the defense of the Bengals. But I think it's actually just lower scoring and closer. I feel pretty good about the under here, but we'll see.
Right.
All right, let's move on to the second game, the Saturday nightcap, 8:15 Eastern time, Buffalo against New England for the third time this season. This one won't be in the middle of a blizzard, right? I mean, that's I think that's really the only thing that New England had
Let's see
going
what
for them
the
in the
football
first.
gods decide to do over these next 48 hours.
It might
If
be
they have any
worse
sort
than
of
a
sense of
blizzard at
humor,
this point.
it'll be a hurricane.
I don't know. 0 degrees and 10-mile-per-hour wind that's gonna cut like knives. I don't know. I don't know which one I'd rather take, to be honest.
I do know what I want to take here is Josh Allen under on the passing yards. That's absolutely what I want to take.
And that was a big old number, 280 something yards.
Yeah.
Was that passing yards or total yards? I thought that was total.
Oh, I thought
his passing yards are 250, I think, right now.
250. Okay.
Okay.
So yeah, I'd still
Yeah, I
take
saw
the
the
under
280 on the total yards, and I kind of
Pretty
wanted
sure
to
that's
take the
total.
over.
Yeah, I think
he's gonna have to
he'll
run.
do the same thing he always does. He'll rush the ball and be fine and be competitive. But I mean, to throw the ball, especially against New England, that's just not going to be their formula. They're going to try to run you to death and play defense. That's how they're going to try to win these games.
And they can
I
do
think
that
that's
now.
what happens here too. Yeah.
Yeah, they can do that now because Devin Singletary, all out of nowhere, is actually a good running back.
All of a sudden
good.
decided he wants to play. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a possible strategy for them going forward now.
Yeah. So Buffalo against the spread this season is 9-6-2 with the two ties that we always love. I mean, who doesn't love a good tie? Those hooks, they always get you.
The hook strikes again.
But in their last 4 games, they have beaten the spread 3 out of 4 times and then 1 push. So, I mean, there you go. But again, look at the competition. The push was against Atlanta, of all teams, Atlanta. But they hit the spread on
that was
the
a
Jets.
loss if you were like me and you took 14.5 and you lost by the hook. So
there you go.
Right.
But the Jets, they beat the spread. Same against the Patriots and the Panthers. And then, of course, the ridiculous game on Monday Night Football against the Pats. They did not. Tampa Bay the week after that as well. So, yeah, 3 of the last 4 plus a push. Give or take, they've been fairly decent against the spread so far this season.
And for me, I throw out the New England matchups in a way because I think that the Patriots are this type of team. They're really well coached. They know a little bit about gamesmanship. So when they see a pretty tough team like Buffalo and they play them twice in 3 weeks or whatever it was in December there, and the first game was this weather disaster where they don't even have but 4 or 5 plays they were running the entire game. And the next game, I wouldn't be surprised. They didn't really look like they pulled out all the stops. They kind of took the pedal off the gas, and Buffalo, it was fine with it. So to me, I think that this New England team is going to come out a little bit different. They're going to have their little tricks. They're going to do their things they want. And even though it's going to be pretty cold, you might see some things that they didn't show in their first outing, which could catch Buffalo off guard, keep this game a little bit closer. And the way that we see a +4 right here for New England with only 44 total points on the board, partially pushed by weather, that makes that 4 a little bit more valuable than it would with a higher total game. So I really lean towards those points, and I like it. I think that this game's going to be pretty competitive down the stretch because, like we've said, Buffalo has been, fairly good, but they've dropped some games too, at least against the spread, that you're like, why did you do that? And so I think this is going to be one of those games that if they catch them sleeping, Patriots could win outright, let alone cover this 4.
And we'll see too, like for me, I go back to, yes, they've met twice. It's a divisional matchup, so you never know. It's kind of a coin flip thing. But yes, that crazy, ridiculous blizzard game on Monday Night Football, like it was a 3-point favorite for Buffalo, and the Patriots win the game 14-10. So yes, they obviously covered because they won the game. They won it on the money line. But the difference in the game was 4 points. Like if Buffalo scores a touchdown there, that's their 17. They get their 3 points. They hit it. If you hit, somebody lost their phone in my house. Hold on. Sorry. No, if they get that touchdown, they cover it. And then the last game, they were only 1-point favorites on the road, which means neutral situation. They would have been a 2-point favorite. And here they are, 33-21. They put up almost 2 touchdowns on them. So it to me, I think Buffalo is just the better team. They've gotten hot at the right time. They were real mild in the middle of the season there, but I mean, yes, they didn't technically cover against Atlanta, but they still won by 2 touchdowns. They beat the Patriots by 12.
Yeah.
Yeah, they beat Carolina by 19. They beat the Jets last week, even with playing half the game, by 17 points. Like, they've been beating teams fairly comfortably. Again, they're getting hot, hitting their stride at the right time, and it's because they found the run game. It's because they're actually running the ball effectively. The defense is getting healthier, and they're not trying to rely on Josh Allen throwing the ball so much. So I'm good with Buffalo here, and I'm good with Buffalo covering as well. I think that for Mac Jones in his rookie season, it's a great story and good for them for getting here, but I think he's a little in over his head in this one.
Yeah, I would have to agree on that one. I don't know how much McDaniels trusts Mac Jones right now. He didn't look very good last week. The last couple times these two teams have met up, they just completely took the ball out of Mac Jones's hands, and they relied totally on the rushing game. I don't know if that's going to work in a playoff game, just to ignore your quarterback. So it really depends how much they trust him and how much they let him do in this one. And there's a chance they don't do that. And in that case, I think Buffalo could kind of run away with this one again.
I think that I lean the other way just slightly more because of the weather factors, and I think that that's going to lean into the way that New England likes to play the game. Like you said, they want to run the ball a little bit more, and when we get into, yes, Buffalo has definitely learned how to run the rock a little bit more in the last few weeks, but when they get behind, or if they do find themselves in a hole, they might be easily swayed from that, and that could dig them this hole where obviously Josh is a really great player, but no quarterback is elite in sub-0 degree temperature with wind. It's just kind of how the game works. So I think that if we can see a situation where this does fall, I agree with you what you guys are saying 100%. The Bills are the better team on paper, and I think that the weather just might throw that a little bit out of whack, where this line is just a little wider than I would like to look to take Buffalo. So I like Buffalo to win. I think New England can if they get in the right
So
situation.
on the money
but I love
line, but not the spread. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's interesting. You say, if the Bills get behind, are they going to kind of abandon their game plan? What if the Patriots get behind, by 4 or 5 points? What do they do at that point? Like, they can't just keep running the ball at that point, but then can you trust Mac Jones also in sub-0 temperatures?
Well, I think they can keep running the ball because we're not super worried about, at least in my eyes, I wouldn't be too worried about Buffalo putting up 35 in this weather. I just think the weather is going to be a major factor where even if they get behind a little bit, they might not be worried about running the ball. Whereas in another sense, in a regular neutral site or in a dome, you're 110% right. That could be a death nail for them. Where is this one? It might be something that they're like, hey guys, don't worry. We're going to be in it at the end. Just keep pushing and we got this.
Well, and the one game they won in the matchups this year is the one where Mac Jones threw the ball 3 times.
Right.
So
yeah,
I mean, that basically tells you all you need to know about that, right? Like their whole game plan is run the ball, run the clock, keep it out of Josh Allen's hands, and as long as our offense is on the field, just ticking away the clock, we're good.
They were leading though in that game for almost the entire game. I don't think at any point they were ever down. So I think that would change things if they ever got down in this one.
Yeah. All right, moving on to Sunday, 1 p.m. the Fox game, defending champion Buccaneers, 8.5-point favorites against Philly. I'm surprised it's that close. The over under 46. So what are we thinking about the Bucs as they go on their path to try to defend the title here?
I think 8.5. I kind of lean that. I think 8.5 is just a slightly big number. Not that Tampa Bay isn't able to, cover big numbers. They've done it this season a number of times. But right now, with kind of where they are health-wise, I mean, they're getting players back, but they're still dealing with some questionables and some nicks and bruises. So, we'll really see when the pads start flying in an intense game, how long they all hold up. But I think that 8.5 just seems like a big number when Philly's on, they're on. and they can make this number of a fairly reasonable line. So I think I like the points there. But I'm interested to see what V says. What do you think about this one, V?
Yeah, this one's definitely a tough one. I think if you go back again, these teams played earlier in the year, and Philly did cover. I think it was 7.5 at that point. It was a Thursday night game. Philly got a backdoor cover, and it ended up being 28-22. And at that point, they weren't playing very well. They were just kind of a middle of the road team. I don't think Hurts was playing all that well. Their offense just wasn't performing too much. But recently, just like we're talking about the Raiders, the Eagles have been playing terrific the last, you know, end of the season, and their rushing game is the best in the league right now. I think that's going to be the key in this one. Are they actually going to be able to continue their strategy of running the ball? Because if they can, then this game, they're going to be able to take away the clock in this one, and Tampa Bay is not going to have as many opportunities to kind of pad the stats and run away with this one. So if they're able to run the ball, control the clock, and do all that sort of stuff, I would definitely think they could cover 8.5. That's quite a few points, especially with all the injuries Tampa Bay is dealing with.
Right. Yeah. Again, same deal. Well, like you said, like they're trying to run the ball effectively. They're going up against one of the best rush defenses in the entire league. Now they give up a lot of receptions to running backs, but they also stuff them at the line fairly effectively, and they have for the last 2 years now. So this is a team that knows what they're doing. They've been here before. They're at home. To me, I feel like 8.5 is a big enough number, especially in the first round, that if Philly can stick around in this one, they should easily be able to cover. Even if they don't stick around in this one, I think that because they don't have the bye week, Tampa Bay may start to pull some of their guys later in the game, just ease up a little bit, and Philly might be able to cover it just on that. Like it could come down to a situation where this is a 2-score game with under 2 minutes. Philly scores a touchdown to get it to one possession, and they're trying to get an onside kick to try and tie the game, send it to overtime, and can't get it. So at this point, you're talking about 8.5. That's a full possession, touchdown, and a 2-point conversion. So yeah, you're saying they win it by more than one possession, and to me, that's a lot. I don't think Tampa Bay is pretty beat up, especially offensively. They are getting guys back healthy. I understand that, but getting Leonard Fournette back is great. They still don't really have a receiving core. They just signed John Brown to their practice squad because they're so desperate for wide receivers right now.
Yeah.
So I think Tampa Bay is probably going to struggle to put up points in this postseason. To me, that's going to be their ultimate demise. So we'll see what happens in this one, but I think they should win it fairly comfortably.
Well, and Philly plays a type of defense that kind of matches up well with what Tampa has, done throughout the year. And throughout their time with Tom there. We always talked about Tom being a timing passer in New England, and he's moved to more of a downfield passer in Tampa. And Philly kind of plays back and squats on things. So, he might have to kind of get out of his realm, and his personnel doesn't really fit that so much right now because his, shorter options have kind of been, relegated to the IR and things like that. So, Mike Evans might be in for a tough day. You might have Gronk in for a little bit of a tough day with, some extra attention and coverage that makes it hard for them to really push the ball down the field and get a bunch of points. It's something we've kind of seen happen to them over the last few weeks to end the season, where they put up a 0 a few weeks back off of a very similar defensive game plan.
And I think it's worth noting too, the Eagles being as mediocre as they are, they're 8-1 against the spread this season because, you would be. Why wouldn't you? When you're a middle of the road team, that's exactly what you do. But in their defense, they have only had 2 games this season when they've been more than a 3.5-point underdog. They were a 7-point dog to Tampa Bay, like V already mentioned, when they had the backdoor cover. And then they were a 7-point underdog again at home to Kansas City, and they lost that game by 12. So they've never really been, blown out in a game they were supposed to. Obviously, they got blown out last week with their backups in. I don't really consider that something we can kind of, take any real information from. But they've been fairly competitive in every other game they've had. So, I would find it hard to believe that they would actually get run out of this one.
Yep.
All right. Let's see. The Afternoon Affair on both CBS and the kids version on Nickelodeon, which is a treat. Who will be this year's MVP?
The MVP.
The MVP. Remember, the reward for being the MVP is to be Josh Allen's backup next season. So, who wants to be the MVP? Dallas.
Sounds like we know where Jimmy Garoppolo's going.
Dallas against San Francisco. They're a 3-point favorite, which means on a neutral field, Vegas believes this is a coin toss game. This is just a pure coin flip between these two teams, which is shocking. That is amazing to me. I don't think that the San Francisco defense is that great. I mean, the over-under here is 51. So you're telling me that Jimmy G is that good offensively that they're gonna keep up here?
It was impressive what he did last week, though. You can't knock that from him. That was surprising. I don't think anybody thought he could actually do what he did last week, coming back from 17
that is fair,
down.
yeah.
I was totally impressed by him. I don't know if it's repeatable in any way whatsoever.
I really don't think so, but
it was impressive what he did last week. And I think that factors in a lot to this line. I mean, if they hadn't come back, they wouldn't be in this game. But first, let's say they lost last week and they were still in the playoffs in this matchup, this line would probably be closer to 5 or 6 points. So I think a lot of what they did last week at the comeback is factoring into why this line is down to 3.
Right.
Because that was one of their questions, throughout the year, was kind of like we've talked about just a second ago with the Patriots, is that it wasn't a team that could really work from behind very well. And so when we saw that they could against one of the contenders that's out there right now, that put a lot of people on notice. Now I think that that's also matched with the fact that, we've seen Dallas be streaky offensively, and I guess they're just hoping the wind blows that way. I don't personally see it that way. I think that I like a cover here. I think that it's a more reasonable number. I think Dallas is a better team, especially on their defense. I think that Dallas might actually even hold the defensive edge, because we've broke down the Niners a few times this season, and their defense is good, but I don't think their defense is that good that we're like thinking that they're really going to shut out, Dallas the way that this line kind of sees. But the total,
well, I mean,
doesn't
to
reinforce
me,
that.
what this says is
Strange.
Vegas has no idea what to do with Dallas,
Right.
or just there's so many Cowboys fans affecting the line here,
That's gotta be
or
it too.
something, because against all odds, Dallas this season is 12-5 against the spread. Like, they are dominating the spread this season, and in games where they have been at least a 3-point favorite, like they are in this one, they're 10-3 against the spread. So they're winning games and covering fairly easily in games that we expect them to. They have the only times that they have missed is they were a 6.5-point favorite against Arizona, who was struggling, and lost that game. They were a 7-point favorite against the Raiders, also a playoff team, and lost that game. Again, they were winning that game by the touchdown and then lost it on Thanksgiving. And then they were where's the other one? 10-point favorite against the Broncos. And of course, Mason knows how that one went.
We don't have to talk about that. My team didn't make the playoffs. Why do we have to drag me into this?
Hey, look, they won the game.
One bright spot.
You should be happy they won a game, right? No. So there you go. Those are the only 3 times this year they have not covered the spread in a situation where they were favored to cover the spread. So yeah, to me, I think they win this game fairly easily. I feel like they cover it as well. And I like the way that the bracket kind of fell for them too. I don't like that I'm so heavily invested in the Cowboys to get to the conference championship. I really don't like that in most of the best balls that I drafted. It just kind of worked out that way, because again, that's kind of how this bracket fell. Is the Cowboys are coming in fairly hot. They are putting up big numbers even with their backups. The defense is playing better, not great, but better than it was playing at the middle part of the season. And you're, taking on a San Francisco team that just barely was able to backdoor into the playoffs. That, again, you don't want to look past, but if you can win this game, then you're going up against a beat up Tampa Bay team on the road. And then if you can get past them, you're heading to the NFC Championship. Now, do we have the dream matchup that everybody wants with Mike McCarthy going back to Green Bay in the NFC Championship. I certainly don't want that because I have the Rams in the Super Bowl. So I certainly don't want to see that matchup happen, but who knows? I mean, that could very well happen, or they could go to LA and then you never know. But to me, I think Dak is playing well. I think the offense is clicking. And as long as everybody is playing as well as they have been, I think the Cowboys can roll through this one.
God, I hate to say that too.
Right?
Oof.
I hate to believe in the Cowboys because they always disappoint you. But the only thing that scares me here is the over-under of 51. It's such a large number, and I just don't think San Francisco has the offense to get to that number. I know they've played better recently, but
I mean, despite the fact that they were down 17-0 last week, I was just looking it up. Elijah Mitchell still somehow had 21 carries. These guys do not stop running the ball. And again, that's going to help the clock tick down. As big of a comeback as they had last week, I think the game still ended at 27-24, which is exactly 51. So I would probably definitely lean the under on this one. The spread is very tough. I think this is probably the most difficult spread of the week. I
think it's going to push.
It could definitely push, or somebody can miss a field goal and ends up being a 1 or 2 point game. You can't predict those kind of things, but I'm probably just staying away. I don't really know. I mean, there's definitely a higher likelihood that Dak Prescott and the offense plays well, but we've just seen too many times where something just doesn't go right for whatever reason, and they're just not consistent enough. So I don't know. I'll stay away. Kyle Shanahan has also done too good of a job with below average talent at quarterback to totally feel good betting against him.
And something that Kyle does really well, especially with linebackers, is that he targets these guys in the defense and makes their life hell. And I could see a similar thing going on with Diggs. You know, I think that a lot of what we're seeing with this number is that Vegas thinks that we're going to see high variance play from Diggs, where, you know, maybe he's going to rip one off, maybe take it to the house. Well, he's also going to let a couple go over his head off of a, you know, a funky scheme that he wasn't necessarily seeing, that he broke down on something. Because that's been the type of player that he is. You know, he's been this amazing player that's picked off the ball 10, 11 times this season. Well, he's also been a player who's allowed over 1,000 coverage yards and that's the most by any corner in the league this year. So it's what happens when you have a sub 70 grade in coverage. So people are going to target you.
Yeah, 100%. And just to reiterate my point, I mean, they played 17 games this year. The Niners have only gotten to 51 in 6 of them, like the total of 51 in 6 of them. So the last time they actually went over 51 was week 13 against Seattle, and when they got to 53. Ooh. So
there was like a special teams touchdown in that one too. So it's kind of all random,
right? Like it's fluky stuff like that you're really relying on to hit the over here. So I would lean more under. I'm comfortable with Dallas on the spread, but we'll see. I can understand how you would be cautious there, V.
Yeah, there's 8 games. You don't have to bet on, or there's, what is it? 6 games. You don't have to bet on all of them, but I know people will feel tempted to. There's fewer and fewer games to win your money back, but if you can, just probably stay away.
Yeah. All right. The Sunday night affair on NBC, Sunday Night Football. Kansas City 12.5-point favorites against Pittsburgh with an over-under of 46.5. This is by far my favorite stat that I found for the entire weekend. So they're 12.5-point favorites. That's the largest spread in a playoff matchup since the Patriots were 13.5-point favorites over the Titans in 2017. The last time a team had at least a 12.5-point spread in a playoff game and Tom Brady wasn't their quarterback, it was when the greatest show on turf Rams were in Super Bowl 36 against Tom Brady 20 years ago.
Man,
so there you go.
The deep cut there.
You are welcome. I mean,
this game is gonna suck. I don't know how much of this game I'm actually gonna watch.
Take a nice big drink after that long-winded one.
See, look, you want to talk about games that'll cover in garbage time. This is a game that'll cover in garbage time. I mean,
go to bed. If you live on the East Coast, do not finish this game.
Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Even if you're
Mike.
a fan of either team, just go to bed. This is going to be a terrible game. I don't know why people actually were rooting for Pittsburgh or not wanting a tie last week. This is just
I
a
mean,
brutal
Chiefs fans
outcome.
were rooting for Pittsburgh for sure.
Yeah, for sure. I mean,
That's
again,
100%. Like, are
these
you
two
kidding
teams
me?
played
Like,
like 2 weeks
just when you
ago.
thought you weren't getting a bye, here you go. We're easy. Just
Didn't Ben
on
even
a
just
platter.
come out and say that like he's like, we don't have any shot in this one? Like
pretty
like,
much.
At least he's being real, I guess.
Pretty
And
much.
he said, but he actually said something true. He said they were 20-point favorites, which is what this line probably should have been, or underdogs, which is probably what this line should have been, because last time these two teams played, they lost, 32-10 or something?
So I guess we know where Ben's money is.
36-10. 36-10.
Yeah, so Ben knows what the deal is.
And that was what, 3 weeks ago? 2 weeks ago? 3 weeks ago?
Ben's pulling a Pete Rose on this one.
He's calling a shot.
He's like, I'm playing in this one, guys. I'm point shaving my ass off. This is not going to work for you.
Well, I mean, yeah. Again, to your point, V, like they played in Kansas City, so it's the exact same matchup. They played 3 weeks ago, and the Chiefs were 10-point favorites, and they won the game by 26. So here we are 3 weeks later. Granted, Kansas City did have a close game against Denver in the last week, and they did lose to the Bengals the week before that. So they're not exactly hot right now. But at the same time, does Pittsburgh scare anybody at this point?
No, this is just because unfortunately this is going to be a situation where Big Ben is going to have to throw the ball 50 times again, and you just can't trust him to get any yards out of it. He had 48 completions a couple weeks ago against the Browns, and he had 150 yards or something. Like, he can complete some passes, he can attempt a lot of passes. They're not going for any sort of yardage. They're just like 2-yard passes, 3-yard passes. They can't move the ball at all. They have no semblance of a running game. I mean, it's just they have no way to put up points with this offense. So I mean, it's going to be bad.
Yeah, I do actually like the over though, because I mean, like we just said, it was a 46-point game, so it would have been under by the hook on the last time they played a couple weeks ago. But again, I think the Chiefs can get to that 46 on their own.
Yeah.
So
right,
they can put up 30, 35 on their own.
Yeah, 35. Yeah.
Put up a
35,
garbage time
14.
touchdown that barely go over.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Get a pick six in there somewhere. Just send Ben out on the note. That'll be perfect.
And their matchup before in the regular season carries so much weight because this Pittsburgh team was chasing this playoff spot.
They
needed every win. And when it came down to it, they pulled out all the stops and got absolutely throttled. So when you look at that, I think that this carries more weight than even some of the other games in the matchups that, happened a little bit earlier on in the year.
Yep.
So
100%. And to me, that's it. I mean, that's really all the analysis you need on this one. I think it's just
my question is how did this game become the
night game?
The night game.
Okay, so I can answer that question for you. This game became the Sunday night game because they had to set the schedule before last Sunday night game was over, and they were rooting for Chiefs
Chargers. Yeah,
and that would have been a sweet game.
That would have been a really good game.
Because the Chargers won that game, it would have been Chiefs Raiders, I believe, which still would have been a decent game. And then the Chargers would have moved up to 6, and they would have taken over that spot. Still would have been the Steelers if the Chargers had won it outright. If there was a tie.
If it's tied, then you would say,
If it was a tie, it would have been the Chargers. So they were rooting for it.
If only they had stuck with the plan.
I know.
Just tied it out. That would have been the best day NFL Twitter has ever seen.
Would have been phenomenal. All right. Well, one more. We've got a Monday night game. So this is very interesting. So first off, let's go through this. What do you guys think of the Monday night game now with this being put into the super wild card weekend? Because now you have two teams who already know each other very well, get one extra day to prepare, but then the following week they're playing on a short week. I don't see how that's not a disadvantage going into the second round.
It will always be a disadvantage. The rest advantage thing is never going to not just go away, no matter how much the NFL wants to schedule it out.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely not a good thing. I just also didn't agree with the 7th team getting added last year. I think that was unnecessary. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. So I
Oh
mean,
no, I'm good with the 7th team getting in because
but
I
the
mean,
7th team is never going to do anything. And it's just
mathematically speaking, it makes sense because that way you still have teams competing for the 1 seed. You still have less than half of the teams in the conference making the playoffs, so it's still something you're fighting for. And you can't say that like they would never get in. Like even 2 years ago, you had 10 and 6 teams miss the playoffs. So I mean, it's not like horrible teams are limping into the playoffs other than the Steelers. I mean, that's just the AFC being ridiculously competitive.
But you had the same thing last year with the Bears getting in an 8-8 as a 7th seed. I mean, I think on either side you're going to have one of those 7 seeds just be a
Right.
non-factor.
For a little while
Right.
this season, Atlanta held that 7th
Right. Would
spot,
anybody
Right.
want to see Atlanta in this
that would
game?
have been horrible.
And if the Niners had lost, we would be watching Taysom Hill play this weekend too.
Right.
It's like nobody wants that either. So I think
I
I
don't
was
have a
good with 6
huge
teams.
I don't have a huge problem with it being 6 or 7. I don't hate adding the extra team, but I hate when they try to get cheeky like this. Like I get that they're trying to maximize the schedule and they're trying to maximize their revenue out of it. And this is a good example. If I'm Cliff Kingsbury or I'm Sean McVay, I'm throwing a fit. I am throwing an absolute fit because
Well, like they had this last year and they did or the 7th seed, I mean,
right,
and they did 3 on Saturday, 3 on
3 on
Sunday.
Sunday.
So why move the ESPN game from the early slate on Saturday to Monday night? That just doesn't make any sense to me. Because now you go into the second round, you're guaranteeing that team has to play on Sunday, right? You can't go Monday to Saturday. It's not possible. So whoever wins this game is going to get the Sunday game. And then if all the high seeds win, if there's no upsets, they get the Packers on 2 weeks rest anyway. So you're playing a short week and the Packers are coming off of a 2-week bye. Yeah.
Yeah. And in the same thing, I think it must have just come down to ESPN. They got the Monday night game, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it has to just come down to them, only having that budget for that. And so they get the best game of the weekend and they get to time it whenever they want. And their most lucrative time slot is Monday night. And the NFL just barked like a dog for them. So, I mean, I have a problem with it. And I think that it's going to really hamper 2 of the teams that I love out of the NFC when it comes down to it. And we're going to be looking at, Dallas and Green Bay, like we talked about just a few minutes ago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's going to be very interesting. The only part of this that I'm actually interested in is the Manning cast. So I'll get one more Manning cast out of this to see on the Rams Cardinals game. So that should be at least entertaining compared to everything else you have to watch.
For sure.
But I think it's going to be a good game all around. They were competitive both times that they played each other this season. Are you guys leaning one way or another?
This one's also very, very tough.
I mean, I already tipped my hand. So, I mean,
Yeah.
like I said, I've got the Rams going to the Super Bowl. So
I lean the other way with I think that Arizona in 4 points is a little too much. Now, I get that both teams are kind of limping right now. Arizona a little bit more because they've had, some tough
they've been
losses.
really banged up.
Yeah. So, I think that the number itself is kind of what throws me. I obviously think that the Rams are probably going to win and move on, but I think that this is going to be a very, very close game. And I like taking the points there. The 49.5, I mean, I think that I like an over there too, because we've just been able to see both these teams explode and both coaches move into a foot on the pedal, first 1 to 35 wins type of mindset when they get together, even if that's not necessarily their mindset every other week.
Yeah.
They got torched by the Seahawks too last week. The Cardinals did. So, I mean, I can definitely see the over.
Well, and that's the same thing. It's the reverse argument of what we just talked about with the Steelers, right? Like, yes, they were they knew they were going to make the playoffs, but for the Cardinals, they've been playing for the division. I mean, they were playing for the 1 seed. They were playing for a bye. They were playing to not be in this matchup over the course of the last month. And after they beat Chicago, as they should have, they played the Rams, lost by a touchdown. Then they get blown out by Detroit of all teams, Detroit, in Detroit. Then they play the Colts, who are also desperate for a playoff spot. They lose that game by 6. They play Dallas in a game that they desperately need and win by just a field goal. And then last week, they could have won the division and been the home team in this situation. And like you said, V, they lose 38-30 to the Seahawks because the defense just cannot stop anyone right now. So I think they're just too banged up. They've got too many injuries defensively. Kingsbury has no idea what he's doing, and he's just blindly wandering through this season. He's a great con man, as Jack likes to say, and I think he's going to be a primary problem for them until they move on to somebody else. But for me, like, look, I root for Kyler. I wish him the best. I hope if they win this game, I'm not going to be upset that Kyler is moving on to the second round. But at the same time, I think the Rams are the better team. I think top to bottom, they're the better team defensively, offensively, and they have more weapons on both sides of the ball that can actually lead you to a championship. Whereas if the Cardinals do somehow get by in this game, I don't see them getting out of the next round.
Yeah, I can just envision Kyler Murray running for his life in this one again and just Aaron Donald chasing him, whereas it's harder for me to imagine Stafford having a tough time with Arizona's defense. So
yeah,
I probably would lean towards Rams -4, but again, probably stay away from the spread and just take the over, enjoy the points, and just have a good time.
And the competition clearly, wasn't as daunting as what I had for the Cardinals there. But outside of last week in a game that they needed to clinch the division, which they did anyway, to San Francisco, who did make the playoffs, they lose by 1 field goal and they lose in overtime. So it was a competitive game that they were in the whole time. They just couldn't get the job done in the end. But again, division games are fluky. You never know, which is why this one's up in the air. But they won 5 in a row before that.
Yeah, and at least Stafford was capable to drive them down the field and go up 7 before their defense gave up the lead again. But at least Stafford has, and that offense has the capability of doing that. The Cardinals just haven't shown that over the last few weeks.
Yeah. And what I love here is Rams are the home team. They're playing in LA. Again, you can't take a lot from the first time they played because it was all the way back in week 4, but they hit 57 points total in that game. A few weeks back, week 14, they hit 53. They've gone over this number both times. The Rams have gone over this number in 3 of their last 5 games. So I very comfortably am good with taking the over in this one.
Yeah.
So of course it'll be like 10-7.
Yeah, of course, right? That's how it's going to go. They're just going to
That's
run
typically
the ball,
how it works, right? Like all the hype for the
other.
offenses in this one, and then it's like, 10-7.
Yeah. And see, the thing is that I completely agree with everything you guys are saying. I think that when it comes down to some of these situations, especially in late game situations, a guy like Kyler Murray, pulls some tricks out of his bag that's going to keep this game within range that, maybe they're right there. But I 100% agree with you guys that offensively, defensively, the Rams are just the better team. The times that they haven't really shown up is kind of times that they've, slept on their opponents. I think that Arizona does that to a degree, but because they're so banged up, it does make it hard. I think that 4 just seems a little high over the key number of 3 that I would like. I like that half point there that I would not necessarily give to the Cardinals if I was setting the line myself. I would put it probably closer to 3 or 3.5. And I think that that's going to make all the difference. And we love the hook here. So
I will say, I think Stafford is definitely the more volatile player. I think Murray, as an individual, is very consistent. There's just kind of the pieces around him don't always step up. But I think Stafford, as we saw in the Baltimore game, was like, he can just do in the Minnesota game. He can just have off weeks whenever he wants, and that's hard to account for.
Off weeks during plus matchups, which is kind of what this one shakes out to be.
Well, I mean, and to me too, like, this is a team in your division that you've played twice. You're extremely familiar with them. But for Stafford mentally, like, this is the monkey on his back, right? Like, that was kind of the whole thing coming into this season, where he's played with the Lions. He's played with a franchise that has not been good for, 2 decades. So he comes in here 0-3 in his career in the playoffs. Can he finally get that win? How much is that weighing on him mentally that he's never won a playoff game. And it's like having the yips, right? In basketball, you just got to see one go through. And then once you do, you're just draining them. It's the same thing here. For him, he just has to get this win off his back. If he can come out and have a good game, or even if he comes out and has a bad game and they still win despite that, even better. Then he's just not in his own head. And then I think they can go on a run. But if they start trailing and they're relying on him winning the game and he starts feeling that pressure, I mean, we don't know. We don't know how that's going to go.
Yep.
Right.
Whereas Kyler's just a wild card. Like, this is his first experience, this is his first shot. So we'll see how he handles the pressure. Right? This is when these guys are made. This is how they make their money. Is this time?
Yeah, absolutely. This is how their legacies are drawn. And, you know, this is a matchup that we're probably going to see for a number of years. So these type of games stick with guys. And the smartest and the most veteran of players tend to do better. So that's why, I mean, you think you could probably lean more towards Stafford. But like you said, that's a big if, because we essentially don't know what we're going to get out of him. Because for a lot of the times, you know, and depending on what circles you talk to, Stafford wasn't this guy that was going to just come out and explode for the Rams. And, you know, to some degree he hasn't, and to some degree he has. So he's in this middle land that, like, hey, this is your time to shine. And, you know, if they come out, and we're talking about the second round, if they do come out and command this victory, you know, win by 7 and take it pretty easily, like, the next round becomes all that more of a reasonable line, regardless of who they're matching up with, because they're going to be, you know, much better off in more of a, you know, a good light moving forward.
Right.
Yeah, and he has a chance to go on a Flacco-esque run here, and we'll see if he can do it. Who knows?
Right.
And I don't even think you have to go as far as Flacco. I mean, when you actually, it's pretty hilarious when you put the numbers head to head comparatively, like the QB ratings and how they've done. Like, the season that Matthew Stafford has had this year compares almost identically to Jared Goff in 2018.
Yeah, somebody put that on Twitter. Right. They have this new ability, this tool where you can match up similar QB seasons.
Yeah, the player comparison.
Nearly identical.
Yeah. So, like I said, head to head, like, he's basically a not spectacular. Like, he was fine. There wasn't anything great about Matthew Stafford. This wasn't the best season of his career, but he was fine. This was a mediocre year for him, and mediocre Matthew Stafford is sealing Jared Goff.
Yeah,
we've seen that. And sealing Jared Goff got you to the Super Bowl and lost to the Patriots. So,
right.
I mean, here we are. I think this is an excellent opportunity for Stafford to finally get that victory and move on. But we'll see. I think it'll be a good game. I'm hoping it'll be a good game. But for me, I'm staying away from the spread and the over-under. I like the over. That's about it there.
Agreed.
All right, guys. Any final notes for Wild Card Weekend? Super Wild Card Weekend. How dare I? I also like how they did this last year and it was just Wild Card Weekend. But since they added a Monday game, now it's Super.
Well, I think they stole that from NFL Twitter. I think that NFL Twitter coined the term last year, Super Wild Card Weekend, as a meme, as a joke. And the NFL goes, I love it.
Yeah. That sounds like the NFL.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you know, the betting doesn't just stop there. We did our picks for the games, but, you know, any of you degenerates that got some more money burning a hole in your pocket, we've got the picks article or the props article coming out next couple days, and that's going to have a lot of good picks from these games. V's got another one coming out that we're just going to hammer, and you guys are going to win some money this weekend. So it's going to be a good one and a good playoff run to all.
Yeah.
Yes,
looking forward to it. Should be some good games. And then we'll be down to, what would that be? 4 games next week. So we'll see. We might see King Henry back next week. Ooh.
That'll be fun.
What I really wanted was I wanted the Chargers to make it. I wanted them to upset the Chiefs in Arrowhead so that Chargers defense could go against Derrick Henry and he puts up 300 in his return.
That's so mean.
That's pretty mean.
That is the meanest thing I've ever heard.
It would have been fantastic television. You're telling me that's not fantastic television?
Those players have families, Steve.
Look,
they have to look themselves in the mirror.
Derrick Henry would have 330 yards rushing, and the Titans would have 350 yards as a team.
No, nobody's saying that he wouldn't.
That 20 yards would be amazing.
Can we grandfather in the Texans somewhere for his return just to see the real number go to like 400?
I have to Josh Norman to come back last week just to put up a 200, just because he needed it. But there you go. So everybody enjoy the games this weekend. We will be back again same time next week, breaking down the divisional round of the playoffs. Until then, keep up the nonsense.